Hi everyone, this is Raja and welcome back to this video. So in this video, we're gonna learn how to build a simple, cool Android game start to finish within a very short time. So before we get started, let's take a look at what you're gonna be building at the end of this video. So as you can see here, we have the device simulator opened. So I'm gonna click on play. And as you can see, this is the game. This is the block dodge game. I can simply click on tap to start and automatically the player is here. I can tap on the left to move left, I can tap on the right to move to right, I can dodge the blocks, and if I collide with the blocks, automatically the game gets restarted. I can tap again and move it like this, and as you can see here we have the score which gets updated, and this way the game keeps running. So this is a very simple game, but it looks really cool, and just by building this simple game you will learn how to build a complete game start to finish step by step. And the explanations will be less because we're gonna go really fast. So I hope you're really excited. So let's get started building this block dodge game. So as you can see, I have Unity opened. I'm gonna go ahead and click on new project. Then from the top, I'm gonna select the latest version of the Unity that I'm gonna use. Then I'm gonna select 2D because this is a 2D project. Then here I'm gonna choose the location where I'm gonna save my project. And here I'm gonna give a name. So let's say give a name to 2D Android project or 2D Android game, anything that you want. Here we're going to select the location. Alright, so I have changed the location. Then I'm going to click on create project and our project will be created, and I'm going to wait for it to load. So as you can see, our project has been loaded. Now we're going to build this project for Android. So make sure you have Android build tools installed in your computer. So if you go to Unity Hub, go to installs and select the version, click on the gear icon, click on add modules, and make sure you have this Android build support installed. Otherwise you will not be able to build for Android. So once that's done, simply close this. And now here we have our new project opened. Now if you don't see this kind of outline, then what you can do is you can go to this layout and simply choose this 2x3 layout, and then you can see something like this. All right. So with that done, now I'm going to go to this file, build settings. And here as you can see, Windows, Mac and Linux selected. I'm going to select Android and simply click on switch platform to switch our current platform to Android. Alright, so as you can see, currently the Unity logo is beside Android. That means our current platform is Android. And then you can simply close this one. And at the top, you can also see Android written. That means our current platform is set to Android. Alright, so now I'm going to go to this game tab. And from here, as you can see, pre-aspect is written. From there, I'm going to come here and simply choose 16:9 portrait. So this is the mobile resolution that we are targeting. If you want, you can also use other resolutions. If you want, you can also choose 1080 by 1920. But here I'm simply using an aspect ratio. Alright, so now, as you can see here, we have our project tab. Inside that, inside the assets folder, we have scenes. Inside this, we have our default scene. I'm going to right click and rename this scene to game, G-A-M-E. Alright. So with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and create a few folders here where I'm going to import some of our assets. So first of all, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to name this one sprites. Create another folder. I'm going to name this one scripts. Okay. And create another folder, and I'm going to name this one prefab. Okay, so this will be enough for now. So I'm going to select the sprites folder and go inside it. Here we're going to import 2D sprites that we're going to use for our game. So here as you can see, some of the sprites that you're going to use in our game. So I'm going to select all the sprites one by one and drag and drop them inside the sprites folder. Okay, so these are the sprites that you're going to use in our game. I have downloaded them for free from kenny.nl, gameart2d.com, and I have created this one by myself. So if you want, you can go ahead and download them from anywhere from the internet. So with that done, now we're going to go ahead and drag and drop our first asset into the scene. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this tile. This is ground tile into the scene. I'm going to drag and drop this one. And as you can see here, we have the ground tile. I can simply move the ground tile to the bottom. If you want, you can select this move tool and move it to the bottom. Make sure it is at the center. So 0 for the X. And move it a little bit to the bottom like this. As you can see, this is the game view. So you need to make sure that you can see only some part and some part is outside of the screen. Now I'm going to select this sprite. I'm going to rename this one to ground. Okay. Now from the sprite renderer, I'm going to go ahead and select the draw mode from simple to tiled. So the draw mode is now tiled. Now I'm going to select this rect tool and simply drag it at this side and drag it at this side. Okay, so now as you can see, we have selected the tiled mode, and that is why the ground was tiled like this. So now our ground is ready. So with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop our player into the scene. So here, as you can see, this pig, this is what I'm going to use as my player. So I'm going to drag and drop it in our scene. It is pretty big. So I'm going to click here, press the shift key and simply drag it to make it smaller like this. I think something like this should be okay. Even if you want, you can make it even smaller. I think something like this should look good. Okay. So simply go ahead and position it somewhere like this. Now, as you can see, the pig is behind the ground. In order to solve this, you can select the pig, go to the already layer from the sprite renderer and set it to 1. So now, as you can see, this the pig is at the front. So I'm going to put it somewhere like this. Now I'm going to make the X position to 0, and this is our pig. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this one to player. So player, and that is our player. All right, so with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and set this pig up. So I'm going to go ahead and click on add component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add a rigid body 2D to it. So here we have a rigid body 2D, and I have added it. So now it will be able to interact with the physics engine of Unity. Now I'm going to go ahead and set the gravity scale to 0, angular drag to 0, so that it doesn't fall down automatically. Then I'm going to go to this constraints and change the freeze rotation to Z, and you can also freeze position on Y as well. Okay, so with that done, now our player is almost ready. I'm going to go ahead and add a physics 2D box collider component because we want it to collide with other game objects. So here we have a box collider, and if you zoom in, as you can see here, we have the green line, which is the box collider. So what you can do is you can simply click on this edit collider button, and you can simply drag these handles a little bit to the inside to make it smaller because we don't want it to be so big. So something like this should look okay for our player. So now our player is almost ready. So here we have our player and it is almost ready. Now I'm going to select the main camera, go to the background and set the color to something like a sunny sky color. If you want, you can also set it to yellow, green, black, whatever you prefer, but I think I'm going to set it to some sky color because I like this. It feels like the game is happening in a way sunny weather. So with that done, our player, our ground, and our background is ready. Now we need to set up our obstacles. For that, here we have something called create. So we're going to drag and drop this create object here, and this is going to be our obstacle. So if you want, you can also make it a little bit bigger. I think I'm going to press the shift key and make it a little bit bigger, something like this. So now I'm going to go ahead and rename this one to, let's say, block. Okay. And then I'm going to go to add component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add a rigid body 2D to it, rigid body 2D. Then I'm going to go to add component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add a box collider 2D to it. So box collider 2D. So same way we have added a rigid body 2D and also a box collider 2D. So with that done, now we're going to select our block, go to this tag, click on add tag, and from here I'm going to click on plus to create a new tag, and I'm going to give it a name of block. Okay, now I'm going to select the block, go here and choose block. So now our block has a rigid body 2D, a box collider 2D, and also a block tag attached. So our player or our block is ready. If you want, you can simply move it upwards and then click on play, and you will see it will slowly fall down. So click on play, 3, 2, 1, as you can see, it automatically falls down because of the gravity. And if you move it to the left, it automatically falls down below because then it will not collide with the player. Okay, so our block is ready and our player is ready. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to go to this scripts folder and create few scripts that we're going to use in this case. So I'm going to right click, create a new C# script, and I'm going to create a script named player. Okay, then I'm going to create another C# script. I'm going to name this one GameManager, just like this. Then I'm going to create another C# script, and I'm going to name this one block. Okay, so here we have our block script, GameManager script, and our player script as well. So now I'm going to select the block, and in our block, we're going to simply drag and drop our block script. Okay, if you want, you can also go to this add component, scripts, and from here attach the block script. So any way you prefer. So here we have a block script attached. So let's go and double click to open it in Visual Studio and write our first code. So double click to open it. Alright, so now as you can see, our block script has opened up in Visual Studio. So now we're gonna write our very first code. So here, this is a simple code that we need to write. We don't need this start function, so we're gonna go ahead and delete this one. So inside the update, what you're gonna do is we're gonna check if the block is outside of the screen, then we're gonna delete it. That's all we need to do in this code. So we're gonna say if transform.position dot y is less than -6f, so it is below our camera level, then we're gonna simply go ahead and destroy game object. Okay, so whenever our position goes outside of the screen and below the screen, then we're gonna simply destroy the box. Otherwise there will be so many blocks cluttered into the screen and they will never get destroyed. So now that we have written it, I'm gonna save it, go back to Unity. And now that we have the script attached to the block, you will see whenever I click, the block will fall down, go outside, and as you can see, automatically it got destroyed. So now whenever I click, the block will automatically get destroyed. Alright, so now our block is ready. Now what you're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and make it a prefab. A prefab is a game object which we can reuse again and again. And here we're gonna use this box as our obstacle again and again, and that is why we need to set it as a prefab. So we're gonna go to the prefab folder and drag and drop our block right here. Now as you can see, the block becomes blue. That means it is now a prefab. So I'm going to disable this from the scene because we don't need it in the scene anymore because we already have it in the prefab. Alright, so now with that done, now we need to write the code to make our player move. So let's go and start writing that. So I'm going to go to the player, and from here I'm going to go to add component, scripts, and I'm going to add the player script to the player. Now I'm going to double click to open the player script up and start editing it. So here as you can see, we have the player script opened. So let's go and start coding. So first of all, we will need few variables here. So for that, here I'm going to go and write public float move speed. So this will decide how much faster the player will move. Then we'll need a reference to the rigid body 2D that we have attached to our player. So we're going to create a variable called rigid body 2D RB. So this will give us a reference to the rigid body that we have attached to the player, and it will help us to move the player left and right. Now you can also create an awake function, but here you can simply go and inside the start function write RB equals get component rigid body 2D. So now we will have access to the rigid body 2D component that is attached to the player inside this RB variable. So just by using this RB variable, we can move the player, do all the physics functions, and perform all the physics operations on the player. Okay, so with that done, now what we're going to do is we're going to come inside the update function. Inside the update function, we're going to check if our player is tapping on the left side of the screen, then we're going to move the player left, and if it is tapping on the right side of the screen, then we're going to move the player to the right. In order to check that, first of all, we're going to write if input dot get mouse button down, not button down, but mouse button 0. So this function gets called again and again whenever we are pressing on the screen with mouse or tapping on our screen with a touch finger in an Android device. So whenever you are continuously pressing on the screen, this function automatically gets called. And whenever this function gets called, this if condition will become true, and then we will move our player. Now else, that is whenever we lift our finger, we are not going to move our player and set its velocity to 0. Okay, so whenever we press the button, we're going to move our player, and whenever we are not pressing the button, we're going to set the velocity to 0. So here we're going to say else rv.velocity equals 0. So whenever we are not tapping on the screen or touching on the screen, we're going to simply make the velocity variable of our rv to 0. Not 0, we're going to write vector2.0. So whenever we are not pressing our fingers, our velocity will be 0. And whenever we are pressing our finger, first of all, we need to check at which point we are pressing our finger or at which point we are clicking our mouse. In this case, we are simply checking at which point we are pressing our finger. For that, we can create a new variable, vector3 touch pose. And inside that, we're going to write input.mouse position. So this mouse position variable will give us the position where our mouse is currently or where our touch finger is currently whenever we are pressing on the screen. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to convert this mouse position from screen point to world point. And whenever we convert it to the world point, automatically our center becomes 0, the left becomes negative, and the right becomes positive. So it becomes very, very easy to handle the touch inputs and control the player. So that is why we need to convert this one from screen point to world point. To do that, here we're going to simply write camera dot main dot screen to world point, and inside this function we're going to simply put our input dot mouse position. Okay, so simply say we are getting the mouse position which is in screen points, then we are converting it to the world points so that the center becomes 0, the left becomes negative, and the right becomes positive, and then we are putting it inside this touch pose variable. So now inside the touch pose variable we have the position where we are touching on the screen. Okay, so now we need to check if touch pose dot x is less than 0. That means if we are pressing on the left half of the screen, or else if we are pressing on the right half of the screen. So whether we are pressing on the left half of the screen or we are pressing on the right half of the screen. So if we are pressing on the left half of the screen, then we need to move our player to the left. For that we're going to write rb.addForce vector2.left multiplied by move speed. So whenever we are pressing on the left side of the screen, we're going to add force to the left, and whenever we are pressing the right side of the screen, we're going to say rb.addForce, and we're going to write vector2.right, or you can also write vector2.left negative. Okay, so in this case we're going to write vector2.right, and we're going to multiply it with move speed. Okay, so whenever we are pressing on the right side of the screen, we are adding a force at the right side with this move speed value, and whenever we are pressing on the left half of the screen, we're adding a force at the left side so that our player moves to the left. And whenever we are not pressing on the screen, we're simply making the velocity to 0. So just by writing this simple code, now we will be able to move our player by touching left and right of our screen. So let's go and save this code and go back to Unity. Alright, so as you can see, here we have our player, and here we have our player script, and now we have this move speed variable. For now, let's go ahead and make the value 5. If you want, you can also give it some other values. And now if I go ahead and make it a little bit bigger, click on play. Now you will see whenever I press the left half, the player slowly moves to the left. Whenever I press to the right, the player slowly moves to the right. And if I simply leave my mouse, the player automatically becomes 0, or the velocity becomes 0. So this way I can simply go ahead and make the player move left and right just like this and control the player. If you want, you can also change the value to a little bit higher values, let's say 10. And then you can click on play, and as you can see, it moves a little bit faster. So according to your game, whatever you prefer, you can set the value to that, and then it will be good to go. But another thing, you can see that whenever we are pressing left, the player can move beyond our boundaries. So this is not something that we want. So that is why we're going to create some bounds to stop the player from moving to the left and right outside of our screen. So now let's create some boundaries to stop the player from moving outside of the screen. So as you can see, here we have our game view, not our game view, our scene view. So here I'm going to go ahead and click on create empty, and I'm going to simply leave it like this. So this is our empty game object. I'm going to go ahead and reset its position. Then I'm going to select the move tool, move it to the bottom somewhere like this. Then I'm going to move it to the left somewhere like this, so that it is on the edge of the left side of the screen. Now I'm going to go to add component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add a box collider 2D component. So now as you can see, here we have a box collider 2D in green. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go to this edit collider button, and from here I can manually make it smaller, or I can make the X size smaller from X to 0.5. As you can see, now it is thin, and I can also make the Y a little bit higher, something like this. And then I'm going to position this game object a little bit on this side, somewhere like this, at the edge of the screen. So this is the position, and here we will have this collider which will act like a wall so that our player can never move beyond this. So now I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one, and this time I'm going to select this game object, and from the X position I'm going to simply remove the negative so that it automatically moves to the right. So this game object is at the left, and this game object is at the extreme right. So both of them will act as the boundaries of our game. So now I'm going to click and create a new empty game object. I'm going to name this one walls, or you can also name it boundaries. Now I'm going to select both of these game objects, and I'm going to drag and drop them inside the wall. Okay, so now both of them have become the child of this wall. So this is the wall game object, and both of them have now become the child of this wall. Okay, just for organization purpose. So now that we have created the walls, let's see if our player can move beyond this one. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on play, And now as you can see, whenever I click, the player cannot move beyond this because we have the boundary. If you select these walls, as you can see here, we have the walls, and whenever the player moves here, it cannot move beyond the boundaries. Okay, so our wall is working and our player cannot move beyond this. So with that done, now our player functionality is almost ready. So now we need to write some code so that the player can check whenever it collides with the block, and then we can restart the game. Okay, so let's go and open up the player script. And here, outside of all these things, what you're going to do is, outside of the update function, this is the update function, so make sure it is. And here, outside the update function, here we're going to create the void on collision enter 2D function. So this on collision enter 2D function gets called automatically whenever our player or this game object gets collided with any other game object. So whenever it gets collided with any other game object, we're going to check if collision.gameObject.tag equals block. So whenever it collides with any game object, we're going to check if that game object is tagged block. That means we have collided with the block. Then what you're going to do is we're going to simply reload the scene so that we can restart the game because the game is now over. And in order to reload the scene, here we need to first of all import some new things. So you're going to write using Unity engine.scene management. So this will help us to manage the scenes and reload the scenes. So with that done, now here we're going to write scene manager dot load scene, and inside that we're going to simply write game within quotations, or you can simply write 0 as well. So because we have only one scene currently in our build, so that is why the 0th scene or the first scene will load automatically. Or you can also simply go ahead and within quotations write game, which is the current name of our scene. So whenever our block collides with the player, it will automatically reload the scene and our game will get reset. Okay, so let's see if that is working. So let's go and save this and go back to Unity. Alright, so now let's go ahead and test it. So as you can see here with the block prefab, I'm going to go ahead and activate it for now just for testing. I'm going to position it over our player. Now I'm going to click to play, and automatically the block falls down. And as you can see, as soon as the block falls down, automatically the game gets restarted. So whenever the block falls down, let me try it one more time. Whenever the block falls down, automatically the game gets restarted. So every time the block falls down, the game gets restarted. So our code is working. Okay, and you can see that whenever the block falls down outside, you will see the block falls down and automatically gets destroyed, but it doesn't restart the scene. So our restarting code is pretty much working and our player code is almost finished. So now what we need to do is we need to write a game manager code so that we can play the game again and again. We can start the game whenever we tap for the first time, and we can also keep the score. So let's do those things. So now let's go and disable the block because we don't need it right now. So here I'm going to create another new empty game object, and I'm going to name this one game manager. Game manager, just like this. And then I'm going to create another new game object, empty, and I'm going to name this one our spawn point. So this is the point from where our blocks will keep spawning. So I'm going to select the spawn point and reset its position. Now I'm going to move the spawn point over somewhere like this outside of our camera view so that it can spawn blocks right from here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create random spawn points from here. We're going to create random spawn points over the x-axis, like here, 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 and randomly spawn blocks from here, 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 so that our player can dodge blocks from anywhere. Okay, so whenever we're gonna reference this spawn point, we don't need to change its y or z position. We only need to create a random x position on this line, and then we can spawn the block from there and the block will fall down over the player. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to select my spawn point, make its x position to 0. Then I'm going to select the game manager, drag and drop the game manager script over it, then double click to open up our game manager. Okay, so here we have our game manager. So let's go, and first of all we need some variables that we gonna use here. So first of all we're gonna create a public game object block variable. So this block variable will hold the reference to our block so that we can spawn the block and instantiate the block. Then we need a public float max x variable. This variable will decide the limit up to which point we can spawn the block on the x-axis, okay, on the left and right. Then we need a reference to public transform spawn point. So this will hold the reference of the spawn point so that we can actually understand at which position we need to spawn the game object. Then we need another function, public float, not function, a variable, public float spawn rate. So this spawn rate will decide how fast we want to spawn the blocks. Let's say we spawn the first block, then after 1 second we spawn the second block. So that's what will be decided using this spawn rate. Okay, so with that done, now I think most of the things are ready. So now what we need to do is, here we need to create another new variable. Let's say we're gonna name this one bool game started. So this will decide if our game has started or not, and by default it will be false, and you can also manually set it to false. And in this case, I think we don't need the start function, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. So in the update, we first of all don't need much things. So later on we'll need something. So first of all, what you're going to do is, here we're going to create a new function. We're going to name this one void spawn block. So this function will be useful to spawn the blocks. Okay, so first of all, what you're going to do is, here first of all we need a position where we can spawn the blocks. So for that, we're going to write vector3 spawn pose equals spawn point dot position. And if you remember, what is this spawn point? This spawn point is the spawn point transform, and here we will add the reference to the spawn point which we have created in the editor, the spawn point variable, okay, or the spawn point object. So here we have got the position of that spawn point. Now we need to create random x positions over that spawn point's x-axis, so that we can spawn randomly blocks on the different positions, and it will look that random blocks are spawning at random positions. So for that, we're going to write spawn point dot x. So we only need to modify the x position of the spawn point, as we have discussed already. And here we're going to write random dot range. So we're going to create a random value between minus max x and positive max x. So within negative max x and positive max x, we're going to create a random value, and then we're going to put the random value inside this spawn point dot x variable. Okay, so if we do that, what will happen is, not spawn point, actually I have made a mistake, spawn pose dot x. So now we are creating a random x position over this spawn position, and then we need to instantiate our block at this random spawn position. To do that, we're going to write instantiate. Within that, we're going to write, first of all, what are you going to instantiate? We're going to instantiate the block. Then at which position? Of course, the spawn position that we have created, the spawn pose. And then we need to write the rotation, which will be the default rotation, that is quaternion.identity. So because we don't need any external rotations in this case. So this way, whenever this is not start, I think I have made some mistake. This will be spawn block. Okay, so inside the spawn block, what we are doing is, we are creating a random spawn position. Then we are creating its random x position using this minus max x and positive max x. Then we are instantiating the block at the random spawn position, so that our block gets spawned from random positions. Okay, so with that done, now our things are almost ready. Now what we need to do is, here we need to repeatedly call this spawn block function, because this spawn block function will spawn the block only once, but we need to call it repeatedly again and again, so that it gets called again and again. For that, here we're going to create another function. We're going to call it void start spawning. This is the name of the function. And here what we're going to do is, we're going to write invoke repeating. So this invoke repeating function can call any function again and again after a certain rate. So first of all, we need to write which function we need to call. So within quotations, we're going to write spawn block exactly as it is written here. So it is best if you can go ahead and copy this from here and paste it right here, because if you don't write it exactly like this, then it will not work. So spawn block, then we need to write after how much time this will start calling the spawn block function. So for that, we're going to write 0.5f, because after just half seconds we want to call. Then we need to write how many times, or after how much second it will get called again and again and again and again. For that, we're going to use the spawn rate variable that we have already created. So let's say the spawn rate value is 1. That means, first of all, it will get called after 0.5 seconds. Then after 1 second it will get called again, after 1 second it will get called again, after 1 second it will get called again. So after every 1 second it will get called again and again, and our blocks will be spawned one by one at random positions whenever this start spawning function is called. Alright, so now all we need to do is we need to call this start spawning function whenever the game starts. And let's see how we can do that. So for that, inside our update, what we're going to do is we're going to say if input.get mouse button down 0. So that means whenever we tap on the screen or click on the screen for the very first time, then we want to start the game. Okay, so whenever we are tapping on the screen and the game has not started, so that means if not game started, so that means the game started is false. As you can see in the beginning, the game started is set to false. So in the beginning the game started is false. So that is why whenever we tap on the screen for the first time, we want to start spawning, and then the game will be started. So the game started will be true, and then it will be not called again. And if you don't give these conditions, then what will happen is every time you click on the screen, automatically this start spawning function will get called. But we want to call it only once at the beginning of the game. So that is why we need to write if we are tapping on the screen and the game has not started yet, then we want to spawn this. Okay. So whenever this happens, what you're gonna do is we're gonna call this start spawning function. So we're gonna write start spawning, and this function will get called. And then we need to simply write game started equals true. So now whenever we tap on the screen for the first time, the start spawning will be called and the game started will become true. Okay, so this code should work and these things are already set up. So let's go and save this code, go back to Unity, add the references and see how this one is working. So let's go and save this, go back to Unity. All right, so now as you can see here we have the game manager and it is asking for some references. So first of all, we need to give a reference to the spawn point. And as you can see here, we have already created a spawn point. So I'm going to drag and drop the spawn point right here. Next, it is asking for the spawn rate. So let's say for now, give the spawn rate to 1. That means after every 1 second, a new block will be spawned. Next, we need to give a reference to the block game object, as you can see here. So for that, we're going to go to the prefab folder and drag and drop the block right here. And make sure you drag and drop it from the prefab and not from the scene, because from the scene, if you drag and drop it, it will get destroyed and then it will not work again. So only drop it from the prefab so that we can reuse it again and again. Next, we need to give a max exposition, which will be the maximum point up to which we can spawn the block. So for that, let's say I select the block and I can simply go ahead and enable it for now. And as you can see, whenever I move to the left, let's say this will be the extreme left position. And as you can see, current position is minus 2.24. So let's say I can spawn it up to 2.25. Okay, so that will be the minus maximum position and the positive maximum position will be 2.25. So now we're going to disable it. So I'm going to go to the game manager and set the max x to 2.25. So this will be the maximum position up to which our blocks can be spawned. So with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and save this and let's see if our code is working. So let's go. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, click. And now as you can see, our blocks start spawning at random positions and they get destroyed automatically. And whenever I collide with the player, as you can see, the scene gets restarted. So every time it collides with the player, the scene gets restarted, but it will start working only when I click on the screen for the very first time. So as you can see, currently no blocks are spawning, but if I tap, it starts and the blocks start falling and the game starts. And now as you can see, the blocks are falling, I can collide and the game gets restarted. So the main mechanism of the game is actually working pretty fine. So now what we need to do is we need to add some scores to make it some interesting, and we need to add some UI so that we can start tapping and we can create the menu. So let's do that now. So what you can do is, as you can see here inside the sprites folder, I have this tap to start. I can go ahead and drag and drop it right here. If you want, you can also use any other things that you want, but in this case I have created this tap to start function, tap to start image by myself, so I'm using it. And as you can see, it is giving it some error. So what you can do is you can select it from the import settings, select the sprite mode to single and click on apply. And once you've done that, simply drag and drop it once again and now it will work. So I'm going to delete the previous one and now I'm going to use this one. So this will be our tap to start text. If you want, you can also make it a little bit smaller or bigger. So this text will be here in the beginning and later on it will go away. Okay, so this is our tap to start text. Now what I'm going to do is I'm here going to create a UI and I'm going to create this UI text mesh pro text. So you can click import TMP essentials. So as you can see, the TMP has been imported. So now as you can see here, we have our canvas, and along with it, we also have this text mesh pro text. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this one to score text. So score text. And as you can see, currently you probably cannot see it in the screen. So select this score text, go to this rect transform and reset its position. Now as you can see, it is at the center. So first of all, what you need to do is we need to select the canvas, go to the UI scale mode and select scale with screen size. Give the reference resolution to 1080 by 1920 or any other resolution. Set the match to 0.5 so that our UI gets scaled automatically to different screen sizes. Okay, so with that done, now as you can see, if you double click on the score text, you will be directed to the score text on the canvas. So make sure to double click it. Now as you can see here, we have our score text. Now we can select the rect tool and drag it to make it bigger, something like this on this side, and also drag it to make it bigger on the upper side as well. So with that done, now as you can see here, we have our score text. I can simply go ahead and move it to the top. Now I can go ahead and set it to 0, set this text to 0, because this will be our score and it will be 0. Now I'm going to go ahead and change the font size to much higher value. As you can see, currently it's 30. I'm going to make it about 100, or let's say 300. I think 300 should be good for this point. Okay, 300. Now we need to put it to the center. For that, from the alignment, I'm going to select center from here and center vertically as well. So now our text is at the center, and automatically whenever the score gets incremented, we want to set it to 1, 2, 300, 1000 and all these things. So in the beginning it will be 0, just like this. Now I'm going to select the vertex color and change the alpha value to a little bit down, so just to make it look a little bit cooler. If you want, you can also keep it to 0, and you can also change the color if you want to. I think I'm going to make the alpha value something like this because this looks good and I like this. Okay, so with that done, our score text is ready. So now all we need to do is we need to actually write code so that our score gets incremented and automatically it gets updated on the score text on the screen. So to do that, I'm going to select the game manager and let's go and open up the game manager script. So inside the game manager script, we need some more references right here. So first of all, here we're going to create a new reference. We're going to call it public game object, and we're going to call it tap text. So this will store the reference to the tap text, and we need to disable it whenever the game starts. Then we're going to say text mesh pro public text mesh pro UGUI, and for that we can create a variable called score text. Now whenever I wrote this text mesh pro UGUI, as you can see, automatically it imported the text mesh pro. In your case, if your editor didn't import it, you need to write using TM Pro at the top, otherwise it will not work. So make sure to write using TM Pro. Then public text mesh pro UGUI score text. So this score text variable will store the reference to the score text that you have created. Now here we need to create another public variable, not public variable, we need to simply write int score equals 0. So this will be our score variable. Now we need to find a mechanism so that the score gets incremented automatically. To do that, what you can do is every time we spawn a new block, we can automatically increment the score value. For that, here we can write, whenever we are spawning a block, we can write score plus plus. So this will simply increment the score value. Next, we also need to update the score value on the UI element. For that, we can write score text dot text equals score dot to string. So here what we're doing is, this score variable is an integer. We are converting it to a string, otherwise it's not going to work. Then we are setting our UI text value. We are setting the text value of our UI element that we have created on the screen to this score value. So whenever it will be 1, it will become 1. It will be 2, it will become 2, and automatically our score will change on the screen. So most of the things are almost ready. Another thing we need to do is, as you can see here, we have this tap text inside this game object. So whenever the game starts, we need to disable the tap text. So here we're going to say tap text dot set active to false. So whenever the game starts, we want to disable the tap text and start the game, and we want to increment the score 1 by 1 by 1, and then we need to keep the game going. So with that done, let's go and save this code, go back to Unity, Okay, so now as you can see here we have our score text, here we have our game manager. It is waiting for some references. As you can see, first of all we need to give a reference to the tap text. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this tap to start text right here. Then it is asking for a score text. So I'm going to drag and drop the score text right here. So make sure to drag and drop these references correctly, otherwise it's not going to work. So now with that done, let's go and click on play. And as you can see in the beginning, the tap to start is showing, and whenever I click the first time, the tap to start goes and the game starts, and our score gets incremented one by one, and whenever the block falls, our score gets increased, and if I go ahead and collide, automatically the game gets restarted. So our code is working, our game is working, and it is a completely fully functional game that we can see here. So as you can see, our game is working pretty cool, our score is working, our player is working, and everything looks cool. So let's go and test it on the mobile device and see how this is working. So we're going to go to this window, general, and we're going to go to this device simulator. And from here, I'm going to select Google Pixel 5. You can use any other Android or iOS device if you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on play and see how this will work in a real mobile device. So I can click on play, and now I can simply drag. And as you can see, when I click, automatically the player moves and I can dodge it. And whenever I collide, automatically the game gets restarted and it starts again. So if I collide, the game gets restarted, and it is asking me to tap to start. If I click, it will start again, simply just like this. So this way our game is pretty much working, as you can currently see. If I go ahead and make it full screen, as you can see, this is how the game is working. So another thing that we want to do is, as you can see, the tap to start is going beyond boundaries. So what you can do is we can simply select this tap to start from the image right here. So you can select the tap to start, and you can, if you want, you can simply make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to press the shift key to make it a little bit smaller, just like this. I think this one should look good. Okay, if you want, you can also make it a UI element just like our score text, then it will look even better, but I think this one should look good as well. So let's go and convert it to a score text, UI text. So canvas UI image. So this will be our image, and this will be tap text, tap image. Then what you're going to do is, in the tap image, I'm going to go ahead and select the source sprite and select our tap to text image right here. Or you can simply go to the sprites folder and drag and drop the tap to start into this source image of this tap image. Okay, so this is our tap image. Now I'm going to simply click on set native size, and automatically it will become bigger. Now I'm going to disable the tap to start that we have already created before, disable this one. And then I'm going to select this tap image from here, double click to zoom in and make it bigger, just like this. So this way we have used the UI element instead of a random game object just to create the tap text. Okay, just so that it automatically scales to different screen sizes. Now in our game manager, instead of this tap to start, we need to drag and drop this tap image right here. Okay, so now let's go and test it one more time in our simulator. So let's go to Windows General and Device Simulator. Let's select Google Pixel 5. And now let's click on play. And now as you can see, whenever I go, the UI is looking perfect, because in this case we have used a UI text instead of a random image. Okay, so this way, as you can see, our game is working, our code is working, and it is looking pretty good, and it is a completely working Android game. Our game is almost done, but here's one more step you can take to make it look even cooler. So you can create a title text right here to make the game look really cool. So I have created a title text and I have put it in my sprites folder just now. So this is the title text that I have created in Photoshop. If you want, you can create it, or you can use any other title text that you want to. So what I can do is, in the canvas, I'm going to go ahead and click on UI and create a new image. Okay, and I'm going to name this one, let's say title. Okay, now I'm going to select the title and make sure I'm going to reset its position. Now in the source image, I'm going to drag and drop this block dodge image that I have created, and then I'm going to click on set native size. Now it will become bigger. Now what I can do is I can simply go ahead and make it bigger to make it suitable for our game, just like this. Not like this, just like this. So choose a size which is suitable for your game. I think I'm going to choose a size like this, and this looks really cool. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this title a child of our tap image object. So I'm gonna drag it inside this tap image. So now what will happen is, in our code we are automatically actually disabling this tap image. So whenever this tap image will be disabled, our tap title text will also be disabled along with it. Okay, so now with that done, our game is ready to test again. Now I can go ahead and go to Window, General, Device Simulator. Let's select the Google Pixel 5. And now here we have a block dodge. Now let's see how this one is looking. So let's go and click on play. And this is the block dodge. Whenever I start, as you can see, the title and the tap text both goes away. And whenever the game over happens, automatically they return. So I can start, I can play, I can get score, and I can die, and the game gets restarted. So as you can see, this way the game is really working fine, and it's looking really cool right now. So this way we have created an Android game. So in order to build it, what you can do is you need to go to this file, build settings, and from here make sure you have this scene added. Then you need to go to this player settings. From here give a company name. Let's say I give the name Charger Games. You can give a name to your product. This is the name of the game, Big Dodge. If you want, you can also give an icon. For now I'm gonna give an icon of this pig that we already have here. I'm gonna go to the sprites folder. Let's go to the sprites folder and drag and drop the pig image right here. So this is our icon, game icon right now. Now I'm gonna come down to this other settings. So now from the other settings, if you want, you can make some changes. As you can see here, we have the version. So every time you create a new version, you need to give a different version here, different version number here. You can select the target architecture, and you can also select the version of the Android. And as you can see, override default package name. This is really essential. You need to give a package name, otherwise you cannot export it. And if you uncheck this, as you can see, automatically Unity will give you a default package name. You can use this one, and if you want, you can also give your own package name just by clicking here. Alright, so as you can see, com.chargergames.pigdodge is our current default package name, so you can either write it or give it right here. Next, as you can see from the resolution and presentation, if you want, you can also change it to windowed or full screen. If you want, you can also disable this auto rotation. So I want to play the game only in the portrait mode. That's why I'm going to disable the auto rotation. So with these things done, now our game is ready to be built. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on build. And here I'm going to create a new folder called Android build. Inside this folder, I'm going to name this file to Big Dodge. Then I'm going to click on save, and now our APK will be created. So let's click on save. Alright, so after waiting for almost 5 to 6 minutes, finally our APK has been created. As you can see here, we have the Big Dodge APK. So you can go ahead and put it on your mobile device. You can transfer it to mobile device by USB, by email, by transferring it to Google Drive, and install it, and then you can play it on mobile device. So this way we have created a completely fully working game start to finish in one video. So I hope you really enjoyed and learned a lot of new things in this video. So go ahead and start practicing these things and start working and show this game to your friends and family and enjoy. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed building this game with me. So if you want to learn more and build some more cool projects, you can go ahead and check out all my game development courses where you can build runner games, shooting games, racing games, and all these kind of things for Android. You can also check out my C# scripting tutorials to learn about C# and Unity game development. All my course links are given in the description of this video, so you can go ahead and take the courses and build some more cool games really fast. So thank you so much for watching. This is Raja from Charger Games, and I'm going to see you in another video very soon. Till then, keep building and happy coding.